Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to episode number 76 of the Rambler podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. Today we are excited to have Jake Rouch on as a guest. Jake graduated from Cathedral Prep in 1984 and then went on to earn his Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science at Gannon University and a Master's in Urban Planning with a specialization in Economic Development from the University of Illinois. Following his graduation from the University of Illinois, Jake worked for 2 years as an economic development planner for the Economic Development Corporation of Erie County. Jake left the Economic Development Corporation to become the executive director of both the Du Bois Area's Economic Development Corporation and the Du Bois Area Chamber of Commerce. Jake then moved back to Erie in 1994 to serve as the executive director of the Erie Conference on Community Development, a CEO-only membership organization. Jake remained with the Erie Conference until November 2002 when he helped form the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership, a corporation created through a merger of the Erie Conference, Erie Area Chamber, and Erie Insight. Jake has been with the Chamber since 2002 and presently serves as the Vice President of Economic Development. The Erie Regional Chamber serves as the gateway for businesses to connect with the right resources to address challenges, seize opportunities, or meet crucial needs. The Chamber is a catalyst for collective action, rallying businesses together to tackle macro-level challenges head-on and sustain engagement for lasting positive impact for the economic well-being of our region's businesses and citizens. Jake has presented at National Economic Development and Chamber conferences, appeared on C-SPAN, Fox Business, and NPR, and he has been interviewed by and quoted in Inc. magazine, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Christian Science Monitor, and newspapers in Buffalo, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. Jake has served on over 30 nonprofit boards and committees over 30 years working in Erie in Northwest Pennsylvania. Jake is married to Jordan Johnson, a proud father of twins Jack, prep class of 2022, and Elizabeth, and proud stepfather to Finley and Taylor Lincoln. And also, don't forget the family cat, Pepper Johnson, periodically acknowledges Jake's role as a father as well. In his leisure time, Jake enjoys watching his 4 kids compete in sports, running, golfing, skiing, hiking, landscaping, entertaining, travel, cooking, home organization, and this is my favorite part at the end here, hopelessly cheering for the Cleveland Browns.
Yes, sir.
Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jimmy. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so this episode's coming out the week of the NFL draft, so I think it's appropriate to ask, what do you think the Browns are going to do with the draft?
Screw it up. Yeah, the past is a predictor of the future when it comes to the Browns in the draft. Honestly, I have no idea. I've looked at multiple mock drafts. I think it's down to Shedeur Sanders, Abdul Carter, or Travis Hunter. One of the three, I'd be happy with any of them.
Yeah, that's what it seems like from all the mock drafts that I've kind of been looking at too. You know, the Steelers are at pick 21, and it's been back and forth between quarterback, wide receiver, defensive end, or tackle. So
we have so many holes. If they took an offensive lineman, like from the dude from LSU, I'd be great. That's fine.
Yeah, that works too.
Yep.
Well, it's fun. It's neat being in here. You got the Bills, the Steelers, the Browns, and obviously our local sports teams. And it's a fun place to have that competitiveness.
When you're a Browns fan, growing up in Erie, in my particular age group, so I graduated from prep in 84. That means I graduated St. Luke's in 1980. So just to remember what the Steelers did in the 70s.
Right.
So the when you committed, and I always say that being a Browns fan is a birth defect because you don't choose to be a Browns fan. It is thrust upon you. My parents were born and raised in Cleveland. My dad moved here in the late 50s and started teaching at Gannon. And that's what brought our family here. So I was a Browns fan, coming out of the womb.
Yeah.
And so while you're watching your most heated rival win multiple Super Bowls,
right,
become the team of the 70s and one of the greatest teams ever, you have 2 pathways to go. You either give up, or you dig in deeper, and I dug in deeper. So I'm a Browns fan, which I also claim is I was a season ticket holder with several prep grads in the ill-fated season when we, the team left. So when my son was born, he was young, he was getting into sports. Jack, who's a 22 grad, he said to me, he goes, I go, Jack, you can be a fan of anyone. You just can't be a fan of the Steelers. That's it. And I go, I don't want you don't have to be a Browns fan. He goes, but Dad, the Browns could win the Super Bowl someday. And I said, no, they can't, Jack. No.
You'll learn, son.
Yeah, you'll learn. Yeah. So anyways.
We could go on and on talking about the Browns and the Steelers.
Yep.
It's so much fun. My son Braden, he's 6, and he loves football. And most recently, last season, he started liking the Bengals. And I'm like, come on, I'm a Steelers fan. You can't like the Bengals. I don't care if you like a different team. Just not the Browns or the Bengals. And I was like, why do you like them? He's like, well, my name starts with a B, and they have a big B on the middle of their field. So
logical.
It's very logical.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. I'm hoping that ends soon, but right now you ask him, he's a Bengals fan.
Yeah. As long as he sticks to it.
That's right. Yeah, you got to be committed now.
You have to be committed. You have to be. That's a fan.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Well, you were talking back to when you were growing up, being a fan of the Browns and the Steelers, and you mentioned St. Luke's, and you graduated from prep in '84. Can you maybe we'll start the podcast off talking about how you even ended up at prep? We mentioned in your bio, like I said, prep class 1984. You mentioned you went to St. Luke's, but how'd you end up becoming a Rambler?
It was pretty straightforward. I mean, if you're, in that time frame, if you were going to a Catholic school, there was a high probability that you were going to go to prep. But I had 5 older brothers. All 5 of them attended prep. 4 of them graduated. My late brother Matt, in a very short period here at prep, was advised by the administrators, like, we don't think it's going to work for Matt. And he left, ended up graduating from academy. But, just seeing your brothers every day going to school, meeting their friends, seeing what kind of fun they were having, what an experience it was to go to prep. And then you combine that with your closest friends whose older siblings attended prep.
Yeah.
There was really never a debate.
Yeah. It might be jogging your memory. Do you remember what class years they were? Because I'm sure there's people listening.
Yeah, let's see here. My oldest brother Chris was 72. My brother Jeff was 76. Jerry was 78, and my brother Father Nick was 79.
So you guys all had Dollinger as your headmaster, it seems. Maybe the oldest had McDonald.
May have had McDonald, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. That's pretty cool. You guys were close in years. It wasn't like there was a huge gap, but I mean, 5 siblings, right? There's going to be
there was a 10-year window between my oldest brother and me, all of us in between. And I think we may have been Dollingers last year. Like when I graduated, that might have been the end of...
Yeah. I'm sure the teachers, by the time you're coming around, like, oh, another one of you guys.
Oh, yeah. Oh, another row.
Yeah.
But families were big back then.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a neighborhood, with one household had 10 kids, another had 8, we had 6, there was another. I think I totaled up, I said the kids just in our immediate area, which was right around the circle at the terminus of Briggs Avenue near Mercier's College. Mm-hmm. There was like 72 kids just in that immediate area.
Oh my goodness.
But all of those, classes and years, it's funny how you run into those people as you grow up. It's like, oh, I was in your brother's class, and which one?
Yeah, right.
And so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is neat. And those classes back then were huge. I mean, the amount of kids you just mentioned in your neighborhood, but then the classes at prep were large.
Yeah, just because I'm like an old school geeky stat guy, going back to sports, our freshman class started with 325 when we graduated with 228. So these halls were packed.
Yeah. I can only imagine.
Yeah, now your freshman class was always the biggest.
Yeah.
But, there was, 1,000 kids coming to prep at that time. And so it was a lively place.
I can imagine. From what I recall, is there were staircases that some you had to go, they were only for going down, others were going up. So you had to kind of know the traffic flow of the school. And
Yep. Yeah. And, freshmen were on the 3rd floor and, and sophomores and juniors on the 2nd floor.
Yeah.
No, it's fun. It's fun to relive those days.
And when you kind of think back to those days, are there certain, favorite memories you have from your time as a student, things that stick out to you?
There's really so many. And some of them are repeatable on this podcast, and others are not. Actually, the really fun ones are not. But honestly, for me, the preeminent one was in '84. We went to the state championship for basketball, lost in the championship game. That run, that playoff run, really that whole season. We were a rabid group of, a lot of the guys in my class were the youngest of a lot of, with older brothers that went to prep. So when we came in, we were fully vested, and we loved the prep spirit and the prep cheering sections. And so by our senior year, we had it down to a science, and we would road trip for regular season games
cool.
to see them play. And so when you got into the playoffs, it just kept getting higher and higher and higher. I was telling somebody recently, there was a prep playoff game that I remember that at the time, I believe that the stat, 70% of the student body bought a ticket to attend the game.
Wow.
Now you're talking, 900,000 students.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a legit,
That's
8 to 10 buses of students rolling to a game. The energy was pretty intense. So that was fun, and then it culminated when we went down to Hershey, and I think all my classmates, anyone who went on that trip, that was just an absolute blast. The outcome was disappointing, but man, the memories, that was fantastic. But equally, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but back then the pep rallies were incredible. From a freshman year on, the hall rallies before school, which I don't know if those go on anymore.
They do not. They weren't happening when I was a student either, but I've heard the legends of the hall rally. Tell us.
Well, the hall rally is the day of the McDowell prep football game. It would usually start at the senior level, and they'd start, cheering on the first floor, and then they would basically run up the stairs, and they'd just run down the hallway and start grabbing kids and throwing them into this throng, and then they'd go up to the third floor and grab the freshmen and just throw them into a throng. So you really didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And so what would end up happening is that there would be, let's go Ramblers, and chanting and running, and then they would go down the steps and storm into the auditorium, and you would get, 300 plus kids before school having their own rally, even though there was going to be a rally at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it was just incredibly fun. And one of my favorite memories I've said to people is that I came to prep, and boy, damn near every day something made me laugh out loud, like really laugh. And so it was a great experience, and a great camaraderie that continues to this day when I see my classmates, and both guys before me, guys after me. So it's always fun, nice fellowship. They talk about the brotherhood. For people who didn't go here, they won't. I get that they would not get that.
Yeah.
But fast forward, almost 40 years later, and my son went here, and he has the same experience with the people that he went to school with.
Yeah.
Smaller class size, but the same connection with all of them.
Right. Not as many numbers in terms of students, but that same spirit of that brotherhood still exists for him that you had. And that's a cool thing that you get to share with him as well.
Absolutely.
As being alumni of the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is neat. One more kind of recollection question for you, but was there any teachers or coaches that you had, different, people that were mentor figures for you that were pretty influential during your time at prep?
I wouldn't say anyone was a mentor. There were just, but there were people that, there really wasn't any teacher here or administrator that I was sideways with. There were people that while I was here, I recognized things in them, and I just really enjoyed them. I mean, coach-wise, I played on the golf team, Jerry Pohl, Dusty Pohl, was, his nickname was Dusty because he had a lisp. I mean, that's classic prep, right? Instead of saying Dusty,
Absolutely.
It's Dusty. But Dusty was an absolute fantastic coach, a great guy. One of the things that, Dusty set up the golf team on is there were 12 guys on the team. There was an 8-round tryout, 8 rounds of golf to determine who would make the team. So it was very fair and objective. Once you made the team, the top 6 from the tryouts, they played in the match. The 2 high scorers in the match, the other 6 guys would go up and play. And the 2 high from the match would pay the 2 low. And so you played your way onto the starting team or you played your way off of it.
Wow.
And I always loved that it was very objective. There's no coach's favorites. And he would cheer for everybody. He would guide them. He would help them. But at the end of the day, he was playing the best players. But he was just a fantastically kind, good man. And he was, but he was so fun. And he was great. I had Joanne Mullen, and she and Father Hahn, like 2 people that a lot of people would not say were their favorites. But what I liked about Miss Mullen and she was Miss Maxwell then.
Yeah. Right.
But Miss Maxwell and Father Hahn is that they were tough, but they were consistent. And for me, well into today, to my professional life, that's to me a characteristic that you have to have, which is I don't like running into people that are hot and cold, and one day I get them and they're one person, next time I meet them they're not. Han was straight up. He did not play favorites. Maxwell did not play favorites. And at the end of the day, and a lot of this becomes more technicolor to you when you meet them after you've graduated, you realize they were just trying to kick you in the pants because they either saw potential or they recognized you could go sideways and they wanted to keep you in the main lane. But it wasn't personal. It really was about you as an individual and helping you become the best that you could be. And just genuinely kind and good people at the time, very frustrating. And I think I've heard, from classmates over the years that they kind of look back and have a lot more respect. They may have been frustrated or angry at those individuals at the time, but they respect them as they got older.
Both those teachers you mentioned, Maxwell and Hahn, were teaching at prep when I was here. I didn't have either one of them for class. They were kind of towards the end of their years, so they had limited classes. But I remember walking through the halls and hearing them in class, and you even in the hallway perk up and you make sure your button's buttoned and your shirt's tucked in because you don't want to be the one they're going to single out. But to your point, they just cared. They had the standards. I referenced in the beginning of this podcast, prep has a standard of excellence. And those are 2 teachers that exemplify what it means to have that standard of excellence.
Yeah, and the just an aside, those hall rallies, I remember it was the end of the hall rally would happen when you'd round a corner and there would be Han with his arms crossed staring at you. Although one time we were pretty rambunctious and we just said, the hell with it, and we ran through them and kept it going, but that didn't work out great for us.
I can't imagine. Oh, that's funny. Good times, and I appreciate you, reflecting with us for a little bit, looking back on that. We'll switch gears here now and talk about the work you've done in your career, and it's so awesome to read your bio and hear about your accomplishments and the things you're doing for Erie. A lot of your job is focused on in bettering our future and bettering our community, and I thank you for that, and I'm excited to dive into you a little bit more about picking your brain on these things. And you've held leadership roles in Du Bois and in Erie, and I think just kind of a broader question to get started a little bit is, what were maybe some of the biggest lessons that you've learned so far in your career from the executive positions that you've had?
So I had the good fortune, after I graduated from Illinois, I had my degree in urban planning, but I was specializing in economic development. I think it's kind of important, kind of from a career perspective, just give you this background. So I went to Gannon, I got a undergraduate degree in political science, and what the heck do you do with a political science degree? Back then it was either you were going to go to law school, or you were going to go get your master's in public administration, or you were going to go work for the government. Or back then, political campaigns weren't as kind of robust and sexy as they are today.
Yeah.
So those were really the pathways, and none of those really excited me. I took the LSATs. I drank some lemonade the day before, took the test, figured if I did great and I could go to Harvard, great. But otherwise, no. I really just wasn't committed.
Yeah.
And I didn't score well enough, and I couldn't go to Harvard. But it was in my one of my last years at Gannon, and the year before my last year, I took a course in urban planning, and in retrospect, probably not the greatest course in urban planning. The text was good. I mean, nobody there really did it. It was more like we're teaching this kind of like, yeah, I could teach a course on urban planning. But what it did for me, it was really excited me because urban planning was, I felt like on the constructive side of making a community good, not the destructive side of tearing it down. And what I mean by that is that the urban planning process and all of that, not to bore you, but it involves so many variables that were of interest to me. So it involves, how cities grow and evolve and function. It involves politics. It involves real estate. It involves finance. And so all of those variables, and I came to learn it involves, there's specializations I could have taken in housing or environmental planning, historic preservation, planning and zoning. And so there's just a lot of different pathways to go within that. But I love cities, and I always had loved cities. And, coming down to prep is a great example. As a young kid, you're kind of embedded in the downtown core. And so when I came out of graduate school with my specialization in economic development, I had the good opportunity to have an internship at an entity at that time called the Economic Development Corp of Erie County. The guy running it was a legendary lunatic named Bob Plain. And I say that with the greatest respect. Like, he was a challenging person to work for because he was quad A, not type A, but type quad A. But he was a really brilliant guy. And that really kind of first job out of the gate set in motion like that about from work ethic and how many hours we needed to put in, because we had a small team, but there was a lot put on our shoulders. That was number one. Number two is he wasn't afraid to throw a challenging project onto your lap, and it was like, well, you better figure this out, because I'm not giving you an out on this. You've got to get it done. He didn't expect it to be perfect, but kind of I didn't know that, and so in turn I got exposed to some incredible projects that involved building industrial parks in Erie County, and writing grants and working with local elected officials at a very young age, really being behind the scenes and seeing how things happen. So, that for me, starting in a situation like that, I just went to 10 real quick on the intensity of work and what's possible and how much you can get done, and it excited me a significant amount. And then I really went to Du Bois because I had ambition and I wanted to run an organization. And Bob was a brilliant guy. He wasn't going anywhere, and took a job down in Du Bois through a network that I'd met through my first couple of years of professional in economic development work. And it was somebody I met there who said, hey, I think you should come down here and do this job. I'm leaving. And went to Du Bois and spent time there. And so my early career and kind of the stuff that I got exposed to and did ultimately led me back here to Erie. So I got astray of your question, but what I would say is that jumping into a situation and going from theory, which is what college is, into practice early on, it's so different, right? What you studying in school versus, and that's true for all of the people you've talked to through this podcast. There is the theory of the work. And yes, there are some technical aspects, but there's so much art and nuance and ways in which it's really done that you can't get unless you are thrown into the fire. And luckily, my first job threw me into the fire, and I was able to experience quite a bit.
Well, I'd love to hear about how, your first boss put those expectations of here's the project, and it's up to you, no excuses. It wasn't a hand-holding. It wasn't he needs to be the one telling you what needs done. It was an expectation that you're going to take this and you're going to make it what it needs to be. And I'm sure he was involved, obviously, too. But to have those expectations put on you, and then you seeing firsthand what it took to be successful in that world by learning from him, I'm sure that, like you said, set you up for success in other parts of your career as you continue to move on and go down to Du Bois and do other things.
Yeah, and let me just bring it back to some things that I think we kind of glaze over, right?
Yeah.
So, the simplest competitive sports. I played more competitive sports than my 5 older brothers. At a young age, at 3'8" or whatever, decided to throw on pads and play football, and I was not good. But I played, my 5th, 6th, and 7th grade years at St. Luke's.
Yeah.
I got my butt kicked, but through that process of kind of plowing through that fear and doing it, I earned respect of my teammates, but I learned how to get coached. And then I had incredible coaches in basketball through my elementary school years, and then in high school I played church league hoops. I was and those coaches weren't light on you. It was still coaching, and so I think that's a very important variable. It's that someone being hard on you when you go into the workplace, if you haven't experienced it before, and I do think, it's showing my age here, but I do think some folks are not used to being coached, and coaching is not just affirmation. Coaching is challenging you.
Right.
And so a big part of that was of my early professional success, I would say, was driven by the fact that really hard, intense boss pushing me, that did not bother me. And in fact, I responded well to it because that seemed natural. That's number one. Number two, I don't want this to be lost, is one of the preeminent variables that I loved about prep was people would say, what's the culture like? I said, at prep, when I was here, and I think it continues, it didn't matter if you were on debate, band, football, basketball, volleyball, cross country, soccer, tennis, track. It doesn't matter. The expectation was we're going to compete at the highest level and we're going to try and win championships. People will say, but when you set the standard at that level, it takes out, it adds something to the fact that, no, this is not going to be easy. It's going to be hard work.
Right.
But we have a goal in mind. Right. So that stuff all factors into how you enter into your professional life.
Yeah, absolutely. We play sports, some of us end after high school. Some of it goes on to college. At some point, everyone has an end date, though, in terms of their athletics, some further than others. But those lessons that we learn from our coaches, and then just as your point to the organization, having that standard of excellence of we're going to pursue to be the very best at whatever that means in our sport, our club, or activity. So when you kind of put your mind that you're going to work towards doing that in your academics, your extracurriculars, whatever it is, by the time you leave prep, you are so much more prepared to take that next step, to take that same mindset to college or your chosen field or whatever it is down the road and be able to apply yourself. That was one of the things that me too. I was just passionate about the school because I'm a competitive guy by nature. So when I had my academics and my sports and clubs or whatever it was to compete in at prep, it just elevated my level of expectation for myself and challenged me to push myself, which was a big thing as well.
Yeah.
And in your current position, as VP of Economic Development, I can imagine it can be also quite challenging. I'm sure there's things that you've seen through your years being here in Erie that a lot of things weren't going in Erie's direction, and then things are, and then it comes back. There's a lot of, up and downs. What are maybe some of the major challenges that you see facing Erie's business community today, and how is the chamber involved in helping those challenges moving forward?
So let me give you and anybody listening kind of some perspective on it. If you're doing economic development in Austin, Texas, or Atlanta, Georgia, or Charlotte, North Carolina, and a lot of the sexy places in the country, you are, people know about you, people want to be there, you have scale and size. You're an order taker. Mm-hmm. They're knocking on your door and saying, hey, this is what we want to do. I've been doing this since the early 90s. So when you do it from the early 90s, I entered into the workforce during I won't say an official recession. There's, stats that determine that. But let's just say, downturns in the economy, 91 to 93, worked in that environment. Then, the 2000 to 2002 downturn, the 2007 and 8 one, the one in the teens, the 2015, 2017 time frame. I've lived through those moments, and I've lived through them predominantly here in Erie. Mm. So the challenges of doing the work of economic development in Erie are different than they are in other places. I always say it has to do with the ingredients that are in the kitchen in which you're working. So certain things can work in other places because they do have more capital, they have greater assets, more prominent assets that they can leverage off of. A great example would be Columbus, Ohio, right? Mm-hmm. Columbus, Ohio is doing fantastic. Well, look at its foundation. Its foundation is it's the state capital. It has Ohio State University. It has Nationwide Insurance, Humana, and the limited companies. Now, all of them at different scales, but those are foundational assets to a certain extent, almost making it recession-proof, right? The two biggest being the state government and Ohio State. In Erie, I've watched the mix change over time. Mm-hmm. We're in no better place in my tenure of working in this space than we are right now, without question. Erie is in its strongest space. What we've done over time here, and so no individual can take a bow and say, that was all my work. It is the collective work. So a few things we're doing better than we've ever done before. And maybe I should. There's a lot of players that lead to that point. Right? A lot of players. So let me just give you an example. In the 50s, we had 50% of our workforce was in manufacturing. Today, it's about 14%, which is still like double the national average. We have an incredibly strong manufacturing sector. I mean, incredibly strong from the standpoint of the quality, the skill of what they do, and the volume of companies involved in that. So we're very strong there. So we haven't abandoned our roots. We believe in it. We want to keep growing it, keeping what we have here, and helping them grow their business going forward. But when you lose, if you go from 50% of your workforce and probably 50% of the GDP in the market down to 14% of it, how do you replace that? Well, what happened is our higher educational institutions invested and grew. We hatched a new one through LECOM Medical Center. Erie Insurance, has gone through meteoric growth in our community, both, in employment and physical impact. Our hospitals here, there's just stuff in Erie that we take for granted that, every place has it. No, UPMC, AHN, LECOM, a Fortune 500 company in here, still a significant player in WabTech in our community. We had some really good foundations. And then you look at the kind of the entertainment assets. If you're in downtown Erie, go to a similar sized community and find me a place that has as good an arena, a ballpark, and a theater all within 2 blocks of each other. I could go on and on, from the zoo that we have to the Philharmonic we have to the vineyards we have out in Northeast, to the ball fields, the schools, the school districts in the region. That's happened over 30, 40 years, right? It's not like we did a couple things and all those happened. And that's individuals, groups of individuals, organizations, everyone committing to this community and saying, we're going to make it better. So the biggest challenge over time has been getting people to do what they're doing now, which is dream bigger, believe more, support one another, get out of the scarcity mindset. That is probably the biggest change I've seen. 30 years ago, scarcity mindset. If you get something, then I don't, so I fight it. Today, it's like, let's go get more together. And that's how the community has evolved and grown. And I can't explain how important it is. It's the dream bigger mindset, right? Like, the plans are getting bigger. They're figuring out how to say let's not just design it to kind of the old Erie standard, good enough. That would be the old, Erie Insurance. What is now Erie Insurance Arena, it was the Tullio Arena. Good enough. That's what we can get to. No, we now have a first-class Erie Insurance Arena. What can we get to build the Bayfront Highway? Well, we can get this much, so we got it, and it made a significant impact. Today, we're doing the largest investment in a road system in the county's history down on the waterfront. So all of those things, it's a mindset shift of we can only do this much to like, no, we have a grander vision and we're making it happen. So it's teamwork, it's belief. I mean, all of that has changed things. So we've weathered a lot of economic storms. We're far from out of the woods. There is no, and that's the other thing, there's no end point to a local economy. You don't hit a finish line and saying, we're good, we're done. It is constant vigilance, work, but we're at this golden, I mean, not a golden age, I don't want to, because that sounds like it's going to end. I would just say we are at the highest level of performance in this arena, and we still have challenges, but I'm more optimistic about the future of Erie today than I have been ever.
And I'm by nature a glass half full kind of guy. I'm a very optimistic person.
I would never pick that up for you.
and I tell you, like growing up and seeing Erie, but now on my professional side of things, where you start to view things as an adult, not just a kid, you start to count all the assets that you just mentioned, and the way that all this has come together to where we are at this point in our city's history. It's amazing. I have friends who I graduated from prep with. They moved out of Erie. They wanted nothing to do with it. They'll come back. I'll talk to them, or I'll get lunch with them, or whatever. They're like, this doesn't even look like the same Erie. I didn't recognize this block, or I didn't recognize this area. I didn't recognize that. And to your point, it's not just driven by one big major investment that all these things are happening. It's a multitude of people believing in Erie, coming together and say, how can we collaborate together? How can I do this part of the county? How can I do this? And to your point, it's all coming together in the right direction right now. And it seems like we have a lot of leaders in place that want to keep that bus moving in the right direction. And you see it more than anybody else, being in the type of work you do, and then the work you've been doing for the last 20, 30 years here.
Yeah, and there's also in the last 10 years, and from what I can see, an unprecedented level of entrepreneurship, individuals, couples, launching their own businesses, and in very diverse industry sectors, which just adds to the flavor of what we have to offer here in town. People taking a shot. Yeah. I mean, one of the realities of economic development is that every day a leaf grows and every day a leaf does die, right? Businesses don't stay around forever. But there's people who continue to take shots and bring a vision or an asset. And maybe that first person doesn't succeed, but what they've done is created a inspiration or shown somebody a pathway to do it, and then that person takes the swing and makes it hit. Those assets that you're talking about, the quality of life, I mean, my contention, living here through a variety of things, but also being an urbanist to a certain extent, and understanding what drives local, regional, metro areas to be successful. I think Erie is an incredible lifestyle arbitrage, meaning you can You can start a business here because the price of entry is less than it is in a major metro. You can volunteer and serve on boards and organizations that are making a difference here because the scale of the community, the doors are open, the culture is welcoming to you.
Yeah.
You can buy and live in a home here that is far bigger or has more land or is in a nicer environment than other places. The commute times are insignificant, right? The safety of our community I talk about all the time. I say, I love living in a place where shots fired is still a news story. So when you add that into how the quality of our restaurants has gone up, the entertainment options for all age groups, the ridiculous free entertainment that's provided, right? The assets that we have around here. I mean, I just want people to have a perspective of what you have, right?
Right.
I just did a post on Facebook the other day, and it was a fortune cookie, and from years ago, and I kept it because it just I mean, this is 40 years ago, and inside it says, treasure what you have. So you have young kids, okay? When I talk about a lifestyle arbitrage, I'm talking about without knowing where you live. You tell me a place where at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you can say to your kids, let's go to a water park and then ride a roller coaster and get ice cream and watch the sunset on the beach while you swim. At 4 o'clock, you're like, yep, let's just do that. Yeah, I mean,
right.
And you buy a season pass to Waldameer. You can go to Waldameer any day of the week.
Yep.
You can go to Sarah's. You can enjoy the peninsula every single day for free.
Yep.
That's just one example of what a lifestyle arbitrage it is for all of us. And by the way, we can all do that too as adults.
Yeah.
So
we
it's
can.
Great. Yeah.
Well, you just described my summer perfectly. Because that's what we do. That's what last summer was. It was Waldameer. It was the beach. It was Sarah's. I mean, to your point, it's 4 o'clock. Whatever time it is, Dad gets home from work. All right, let's go to Waldameer. Or let's go to the beach today.
Or you could, go crazy and drive 40 minutes to Meadville and see one of the greatest county fairs in the Crawford County Fair in the country, as well as the ones around here. So anyways, Erie is a great lifestyle arbitrage. I think that the pandemic drove a lot of your friends and colleagues throughout the community, kids who came back and saw it in a different light.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I can imagine now that some of the people listening to this episode right now probably feeling pretty inspired and just kind of realizing, Erie is a great town, and they might also have dreams or ambitions or goals to make a difference, whether it's starting their own business or being a part of a nonprofit or just making a difference in the place that they work. What advice do you have maybe for the listeners of this episode who are hearing what you're saying? They're excited, they're appreciating Erie, and they want to make a difference. What advice do you maybe have for them to start taking those steps towards doing something about that?
Well, it depends on what they're interested in. I'm a big fan of if you're interested in something and you'd like to help out, or you'd like, first start from the standpoint of learning more. I think, one of the questions that I saw before we came here was, what advice would you give to a young professional? I'm like, sit back and listen. You don't have to have all the answers right now. It's so rare when somebody's actually done their homework, and when they come into a room and they're doing more listening and they've actually kind of digested what was sent to them, and then they ask questions to deepen their understanding before they just lead with, well, maybe this could work. So professionally, that's a huge one. But here, figure out what you want. In Erie, you can make the direct contact and say, I'd really like to potentially get more involved, and I'd love to come and talk to you about it. What I found here is nobody's going to say, no, I don't have time for that.
Right.
It may not be immediate, but they'll make it happen. And from that, the key is, what's the motivation behind why you want to become involved? If it's to become, well regarded and known as, or it's about control and power, you're probably going into it for the wrong reason. But if you're really truly looking to get involved and help, There's lots of entities out there that need that assistance and guidance, and all you have to do is reach out and say, I'd like to help. If it was somebody looking to start a business, then I would say, come to the chamber. Reach out to us, saying, hey, I heard, that we should reach out to you. We are the preeminent, in my mind, gateway into the much larger business community and to the resources that can help you. Our job is to do a diagnostic of what are you looking to do, understand it, raise some questions that you probably need to answer, but continue to work with them, and then get them connected to the right resources who can help. So they don't have to figure out what door to knock on, where to go. We're a very friendly face and organization to help begin that entrepreneurial journey and hopefully help you move faster. Equally, maybe we'll help you decide it's not the right thing, because we'd prefer to give you enough exposure that you can decide, I thought I wanted to do that. That wasn't the right industry business. I haven't given up the hope. I'm going to keep looking. Or some might say, yeah, I didn't realize it was that much work and I'm out. But in general, most people who come to us, we can help get them connected to a resource that can help.
Yeah, and I would say, me personally, my experience with the chamber is I was familiar with the chamber just in regards to it's an entity in Erie doing something, right? That was my first initial understanding. And then I became involved with the Erie Ambassadors Program. I joined that 2 or 3 years ago now, and that was a great program. So I would even give that advice for any of the people listening is I think you guys are starting another cohort here soon. But that was a great experience. It was a 10-week. You meet once a week with a group of young professionals or professionals, just young, that you get to meet, and you get to visit these different businesses, learn about the city, the things happening, meet the chamber team and what your function is and what you guys do. So I just wanted to kind of mention that.
Yeah, we try to take people behind the kitchen door, so to speak. Getting to it doesn't cover the whole landscape, but 7, 8 subjects.
Yeah.
In depth, where you meet the people running the water system here, and you'd be like, yeah, well, whatever. And then you start to realize what an incredible asset we have built here that most people take for granted. Or a manufacturing operation that you've gone by, hundreds of times. I had no idea what went in. It always inspires when you go through a program like that, no question.
So you've been talking about kind of looking back as to where Erie has been. You've been talking about your experiences, the great time we're at for Erie's history now. If we were to look at the future of Erie and what you see is going to be happening to the city and region heading in the next 5-10 years or so, what are you kind of thinking the direction of Erie is going to be going from what you see at your side of things?
Well, it's the inherent challenges. I can see some storms on the horizon, but I can also see opportunity. I see one thing, and when I say the storms, there's certain segments or certain businesses that I think could be threatened, and I really don't want to talk about that. But what I see in the community here is I see, and this is drawn from a variety of investors, I see more investment into existing going concerns as well as new initiatives by investors that are here right now. I see outside investors starting, and this is the 5 to 10 year window. I see outside investors discovering Erie and seeing this as an opportunity to put capital and help grow. I think we are on the cusp of getting to not the full tipping point, but getting to a point where we are recognized for what we are, which is an incredible jewel of potential located within 3 urbanized areas in the largest market in Canada. We're underdeveloped at this point in time. I don't think it's going to be an explosion, but I think that there's going to be a recognition of all the assets that we've known for so long, our logistical strengths, our quality of life, the assets we have, from educational institutions, healthcare institutions, manufacturing. So there's going to be more and more of a recognition by outsiders. It's not going to be an avalanche, but we're going to see more of that. in our community. On a business development front, what I see this wave of business owners that have come in. It can be new business owners, but it could also be, second, third generation. They're going to operate the game differently. I think they're going to go on more of an acquisition to grow companies in other areas, and it doesn't necessarily mean they'll move that company back here, but they're going to go. Erie had a long history of, we had solid companies, but when one would be acquired, we'd be the loser, right? And so I kind of liken it. I think there's going to be more of, we're going to be doing more of the hunting instead of being the hunted. And I feel that there's just a different mindset towards risk and how to grow a company. I think we had a history of, you grow the company organically and within a defined footprint.
Yeah.
And I see a younger generation that looks at business and looks at modernizing it. They don't want to move it out of Erie. They want to grow it, but Erie's going to be the base from where they grow. I can see that happening over the next 10 years with far more frequency than we've seen it recently.
You're at a pretty interesting intersection of passions, it seems. Like, you were mentioning how you kind of fell in love with this sector, this industry, from early on in your educational, as you were studying this, and then you got started in the workforce. But you're also in this place where you're helping people. You're making a difference, right? You're out there serving people and doing work where you have this passion for the business and the economic development side of things, but you get to use it for good and helping companies and helping us who live in Erie every day, that some people might not even be familiar with your name, but you're making an impact with the work you're doing. So kind of the question I'm getting to is, what kind of drives you? What's your passions? What gets you excited about the work you're doing? What's the motivation behind, Jake?
Well, the first thing I would say is, and I've said this for years, I'd pay money to do what I do. I mean, so that's a sign that you like the work you do.
Yeah.
But if you really want to know and kind of dig into it, it really comes down to, from the time I was a kid, and this will kind of give you the full picture.
Yeah.
I started going to Gannon basketball games in 1977. I started seeing the prep spirit take full fold starting in like 76, 77, 78, cheering. And so when I was at prep, I was a part of a movement to support our team and get them to the state championship. When I was at Gannon, I was a rabid Gannon fan, and I was at Gannon then through the time where we went to the national championship game. I'm a rabid Illinois and Cleveland Browns fan, and I will cheer for them, and I want them to get to the summit as well. So for me, I have a history of when I believe in something, I want it to get to the highest level of success, and that's how I feel about Erie. And Erie isn't my identity. I am a fan of Erie. What I see is, it's almost like looking at it on the sidelines, is I see as a coach a place that just has so much immense potential, and what my job is to do everything I can to connect the players on the field to one another so that they can get to that level of success and have the same level of love and belief in the place for us to be successful. Because you should be proud of where you are. I sure am. I know you are, right?
Yep.
I'm proud of, and so you're going to see me. I mean, like, I follow box scores for girls softball games in the area. The girl who's the basketball player out in Northwestern, the Pressler girl,
yeah,
I want her to be so successful. I mean, why wouldn't you have been psyched for Carter winning his 5th NCAA championship, right? Yeah. There's a kid caddying for a pro on the tour right now. I think he may have gone to prep. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was cheering for his guy this weekend. He finished second in the third. He blew it at the end. But my point is that Andrew Novak, he was cheering. I cheer for that. So anything that has an Erie connection in business and industry success, I'm so psyched for all of that. I mean, my classmate John Salata, helped play a part here, and when he came to town, we were able to have lunch with he and Joey Lechner and Howard Pollock and Chris Weibel, we sat down. I mean, it was like we were going back in time, right?
Yeah, yep.
I'm so psyched for those guys. They've all been successful. So to me, I just come back to, I have an immense pride of everything that's accomplished in all the school districts, the universities, the graduates, the people who've lived here at one point in time. It's an incredible place, and I just, but on the that's what drives me.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the equation, I recognize all our flaws, the deep challenges we have, and I love competing and being on the field with others.
Yeah.
Not leading that, but being on the field to do what I can to help move the community forward and address some of those deficiencies. When it's successful, I have no interest in being at the front of the, you know what I mean? To me, it's like, on to the next thing. Enjoy it, love it, glad it's here. What can we do next? So that's really kind of what motivates me.
That's awesome. And I think you and I share a lot of those common similarities, because everything you're saying resonates with me personally. Like, just being that connector person, being the somebody who is cheering for anybody who's from Erie out there being successful. Whether you mentioned a bunch of names, and I'll throw out James Conner, and the great work he's doing, right? He went to the school on West 38th Street. We'll leave that at that. But he's from Erie, and it's great to see people from Erie in all avenues, all arenas, being successful in what they're doing outside of that. And to your point, I'm a fan of Erie too, and love this city, love this town.
Yeah. It was a great place to grow up. It's a great place to, be a young professional. I mean, for me, great place to grow up, great place to be a young professional. Great place to raise a family. It's a great place to work. And, I would just say is that the assets that we have here are significant. We try through the chamber to connect people, those assets together, but we haven't come close to reaching our full potential. We're in the best position we've ever been at. And, I will say this, prep grad Tim Nicastro, I mean, his impact and really being, to me, and I know he would, push it aside, but Tim with, Tom Hagen, Strong Vincent grad, their commitment to Erie and what they've put forward is very, very significant, and they're not the only ones. But boy, it's to a certain extent, when your best player plays that hard, everybody else falls in line.
Absolutely.
And they really have set a great example that's going to have an impact for generations.
Absolutely. 100%. Couldn't agree with you more. Man, I'm excited after talking to you. This is awesome. I think we'll start to wind down. I got one more question for you, but this has been a really great episode, and I appreciate you sharing all your insights and all your thoughts on Erie. Like I said, I'm excited just after talking to you about the potential, and then also understanding the realities of where we are and not being just, in the clouds with it, but understanding the dirt, as to speak, in terms of a metaphor like that. But just one last question for you. It'll kind of circle back to how we started the episode, but if you could go back in time, all right, this is a fun question I ask all the alumni, I guess, who come on. If you could go back in time and you could talk to Jake when he was a student at prep, what advice would you give yourself, knowing everything you know now based on your career and your life perspective?
Oh, boy. You're not my therapist, so I can't get too deep. I'm still bad at this, but I would say, and I do think I did a decent job of this then, I would probably, talk about really being present and absorbing in what's going on. I probably, as far as when I was at prep, gosh, and hopefully you can edit this, I would sit there and say, it's like, I really don't look back at that time and second guess anything I was doing when I was in high school. I really don't. I don't have any regrets on that front. I thought I sucked most of the marrow out of the bone when I was, in high school here, and I have for a long time. I think if because it wasn't about dreaming bigger, trying harder, being more ambitious. It really wasn't. I really felt my time here was great. There's some kind of professional disciplinary things that I probably would have learned about and practiced more in my professional life.
Sure.
Being more proactive on both my physical health, not that I'm in bad physical health, but I would have tried a lot more. I mean, the one thing that I look back on, and even to this day, it's kind of like I got a lot of ideas that float in my head. And so getting those ideas into action requires a little bit more level of discipline than I have practiced over time.
Yeah.
And I like to have fun. So sometimes I choose fun, versus maybe, starting that book or launching that podcast or, taking up that hobby. And so that's kind of one of those things that you get as you near into 60. You're like, now what's the next, hopefully 30 years going to be?
Yeah. Change
some of those behaviors. But honestly, from a youth standpoint, looking back on my years when I was here at Prep, I probably would have. I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah,
I really don't.
Yeah, I think the best answer is kind of what you said in those words is you don't have regrets. And I think just being present and appreciating the moment in time that you were at as a student at Prep kind of culminates that answer from what I'm hearing. It's the same experience that I feel too. I don't necessarily regret anything from my time at Prep. I think it's all part of my journey. It's made me who I am. I wouldn't have advice to change anything. If anything, I would also say to myself, just be present and enjoy this time that you have because you're never going to have it back again. And it sounds like that's kind of where you're coming from, is that standpoint of just appreciating that time that you have as a student at Prep during those years.
100%. Prep was, it was a significant experience and has impacted me my entire life. And predominantly because of the people that, are still in my life. But it was a fantastic experience. It was very fun. The education was fantastic. And it prepped me in more ways than I realized at the time for future success. And so I'm very grateful. And I love to reconnect with the school when I can. Yeah. And, just as all my other teams,
Absolutely. And it was fun seeing you this past October. Your golf team was inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame. That was neat to see you guys get that accomplishment and be back around your teammates.
That was, you a lot of those guys, we hadn't seen each other in 30 years.
Yeah,
we all went off to different colleges, and when we got to get back together, I'm not kidding you, there was not 1 second of awkwardness. We were right back into being the buddies that we were, playing golf with each other all that time. Just a fantastic honor. And, we got together last year and played, and we're playing again this year. That's the kind of thing, when there is no transition, like when you get together, there's not an awkward moment.
Yeah.
You forget how much time you spent with them, how much you really enjoyed their company, and what good people they are. And then to see them 30 years later, and they're the same people.
Yeah.
And they've all done diverse, unbelievably successful things. But at the end of the day, if you called them, they'd be there in a second. What else can you ask for?
Yep, that's what it means to be a brother of Prep, right?
Sure
be
does.
There for one another. Yeah, love it. Well, Jake, we had to skip some questions because this was a great conversation. I feel like I could spend another 2 hours talking with you, diving deeper into this. But I appreciate you taking the time you did to come over here and record this episode with me. I know I got value out of talking with you. I'm sure our listeners can say they have as well. Thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to come and record this with me.
It was quite an honor, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the work you're doing here, and Kevin's doing. The school's in great hands, and it's going in an incredible direction.
Yeah, I absolutely couldn't agree with you more. Thank you again so much.
You bet.